listening to The Watchers, a show where two women from opposite ends of New Jersey watch TV and movies about how TV and movies can save your life. Every time. We watch movies about TV shows or movies.
What?
We watch movies about movies and other TV shows.
Just lately been watching.
I'm broken.
We have kind of just been watching movies about
movies and TV shows.
Because in my head I'm like, we're just doing documentaries, but it's been a very specific kind of documentary, hasn't it?
Yes. I did not think about Tommy and Sav's documentaries while watching this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Jody.
I'm Andrea.
And we watched Getting Lost.
Yeah, we just finished it.
Yeah, we paid for it. We watched a Q&A and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It was a whole thing.
It was a whole thing.
Yeah. It was a thing that I feel like was maybe for someone other than me. But
yeah, it was for me.
Yeah. I wondered if you felt like it was for you, because it felt like it was for you to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We no longer do visuals on this podcast, but Andrea is currently in a hatch.
I'm in the first hatch.
The hatch.
Yeah. You can hear Make Your Own Kind of Music playing right now.
Yep.
A song that makes me cry because of Lost specifically. I had no emotional attachment to it before that. Yeah, it was for me. But at the same time, what were your initial were those your initial thoughts?
Well, let's talk about it a little bit first. What it was. Right? Should we introduce it? Give some information?
Right, because most of our listeners probably didn't actually
because it was a like we said, it was a whole thing to get to see it. Mm-hmm. But it was a documentary about the TV show Lost, essentially, the making of, the during, the after, the backlash, the recent allegations about a toxic workplace, but mostly it was about the fans and the fan community that formed around it, and the fact that it kind of came out in this weird spot in the internet's history where like social media wasn't really a thing yet, but the bulletin board world was a thing. Mm-hmm. Which actually that was one part that I kind of enjoyed thinking about, because I do remember going on the Fuselage a few times, and like I was a part of another bulletin board community in like from 99 to like 2007 or 8, which is like a place that I met most of my friends. So I definitely like my New York friends. So I definitely related to that part of it, like the way that people found each other on the internet prior to social media was usually around fan communities. Mine was around like a dance community, but we all first met online. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, that's, it was, everyone was in it basically, except for Matthew Fox. Uh-huh.
Yeah. There's a fun little, like kind of like the last little beat of the documentary is JJ asking, I'm guessing it's Taylor Morden. It's the director. He's off screen though. If so, if there's anybody he didn't get, and he says Matthew Fox, and JJ says like, he missed out or something like that.
Yeah.
The tagline for it is, or the logline for it is, a documentary revisiting the global television phenomenon Lost, featuring interviews with the cast and crew, as well as members of the loyal fan base who still celebrate the show 20 years after it originally aired. It's a lot. Yeah. If you're going to talk about Lost, like, it is a lot to cover, because like you said, it's the show itself, it's the community around it, it's the cultural moment, it's all of this stuff that came out afterwards about, you've kind of said all of this. It's the finale and what that's done for every TV show finale ever since. And you can't really just, I was thinking about it as I was watching it, because it's 2 hours long, which is long for this kind of documentary.
Yes.
But there's a lot of setting up before you can really get into the community and the afterlife of the show. So
I do think it could have been edited a little bit more, but I know they had they said in the Q&A, I think their original cut was like 4 hours.
4 hours long.
Which would have been definitely too long.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were trying to cover a lot of ground. They had a lot of people that they interviewed. They had a lot of talking heads that generally are people I like, but I'm kind of like I fucking love Paul Scheer. Do we really need Paul Scheer in there?
It was weird. Yeah, I was trying to figure out what was going on.
Yeah,
there,
I love him so much, but
it feels to me a little bit like if I made a documentary about something I loved and there were people I liked who also liked that thing, I might invite them on just to work with them.
Like Bobby Moynihan is a huge part of this documentary, and like I like Bobby Moynihan just fine, and he is the self-professed biggest Lost fan ever. But like he got a lot of airtime.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's because they like Bobby Moynihan, which is fine.
Yeah.
It's almost like I didn't need... It's difficult because, like, I'm going to keep saying this. They're just trying to do a lot. And if you're going to get Evangeline Lilly and Michael Emerson and all of these
Josh Holloway,
you're going to want to give them a lot of airtime.
Daniel Day Kim. Like, they got literally everyone except for Matthew Fox. So.
But I think one of the issues is if you're watching this documentary, you're probably already a huge Lost fan. And so I don't need to hear Josh Holloway talk about that polar bear again. Yeah. I know. Like, I know I didn't learn. That's the thing is I had a nice time with it. And I said, I don't need to hear Josh talk about the polar bear again. I'll listen to him talk about the polar bear 100 times.
It is a fun story.
It's a sweet story. And it sounds like the people in front of the cameras had a lovely time making this show for the most part. Evangeline Lilly's story is a little different, but mostly people seem to really love making the show, and they have a lot of really sweet stories that I've heard 100 times, and that's lovely, and it always feels good. But your documentary is 2 hours. I don't need that, but I just don't know that those people have anything new to add because they've been talking about it for 20 years, and you can't. If you want a documentary like this to do well and you can get those people, you're going to. So I don't know what else they could have done with them.
I know. And it's like, for me, like I watched the whole thing when it was airing. I was invested. You know, I did go to the bulletin boards. I did read theories. I was super into it. But I have the memory of a goldfish. And so as soon as it ended, it left my brain. And like... So I also didn't stay within that fan base after the show ended. Right. Like in 2010, when that ended, I was starting grad school. Like I was not thinking about a TV show. So all of this is literally like 15 years in the past for me. So there were plenty of things that I learned from it, but I didn't have as much of an emotional attachment to the show to make those things like exciting for me to learn. Like I was entertained. I was like, oh yeah, I didn't know all of those things, but like it definitely felt like it wasn't for me. But then I was also wondering if it's for the like rabid fans, what are they getting from it that they don't already know?
Right. And there really wasn't anything for me. You know what it was? It gave me it felt nice to have it all collected somewhere. It's a lot of bits and pieces I've heard 100 times over in a bunch of different places. You know what it felt like to me is like, well, I'm saying it felt like because it is what it is. It just feels like a good oral history.
Right.
But one where I already know so much that it just like, it was more an exercise in like, oh, it's interesting how they're piecing all of this together and fun to see how they volley, one setup to somebody else delivering the punchline in another scene. And like that's kind of interesting from like a craft or like narrative standpoint, but I didn't learn anything new.
Right. And especially because we just watched a couple of other documentaries that talk about pop culture, I couldn't not compare them in my head. And like, I can't say this compared favorably for me to either of the two that I'm thinking of, which was the Tommy Avalone. Tell me the name again.
The House From.
Thank you. It's like peek behind the scenes. It's in the nighttime, and we are not good in the nighttime, or at least I am not good in the nighttime. And Sav's documentary, Chasing Amy. I feel like both of them had more of a unique or specific construct in the way they were presented that was a little bit different from the standard. Like Tommy's was a pretty straightforward documentary, but the topic was interesting, and the way that he structured it, where he's barely in it, and it's more about it felt different to me.
Well, and
Maybe you can explain why, but
for me now, as you're saying that, like a big thing is nobody's done that documentary before.
Yes, exactly.
And to have such a like just straight on look at this weird little phenomenon, as opposed to Lost, where we have so much. Because like you said, it's like National Geographic, right? You put the cameras in front of the things. I'm going to say that every time we talk about it, because I thought that was such a like kind of smart way to frame it. And you just can't do that with Lost.
Right. And like Savsdoc, you know, we are now obviously his biggest fans, but Savsdoc would be like if one of the fans in this documentary that they focused on made their own documentary and happened to be engaging and interesting and talented and have a good story, which, you know, there were maybe hints of that. Like they did talk about how this is what connected it for me to Sav's piece, is that they talked about how for a number of these people, like watching Lost got them through a difficult time in their lives, which is true of so many television shows that it felt, I think it's suffering in comparison, just because what we watched with Chasing Amy was so specific to a certain experience,
right,
and so well honed as an idea.
And Lost got a lot of us through, you know, a lot, but in a very different way, because like Sav and you and I to an extent can talk about how a movie like Chasing Amy was helpful in, like you said, specific and also direct, as opposed to Lost, where it's like, well,
it's an escape.
It could have been any show that you connected with. Like nobody's relating to Lost. I'm sorry, like you're just not. I don't care who you are.
I don't think so. I mean, and with Chasing Amy, or with Chasing Amy the movie, like that was, as we talked about ad nauseum, was giving an example of a way to live as a queer person that hadn't really been seen before. And that's really fucking specific.
Right.
This was like this show and the people, the community around it. That I think was the thing that I wish they had actually leaned into more.
Totally.
And talked less about like actors' stories from the set. Mm-hmm. Because the community around TV shows and movies is a thing that I feel like used to be a lot more like nerdy and shameful and embarrassing, and now is just fan culture. And it's like, it's become such a normal thing. But Lost was one of the first shows to, and we talked about this actually with Blair Witch, how like it hit that sweet spot with the internet where like with Blair Witch, this is like kind of a stretch, but where we said like, the internet hadn't been around long enough yet for people to know that this was a hoax right away, but also the internet allowed it to go viral. Mm-hmm. And Lost came of age during the rise of Twitter, you know, became one of the first shows that would be like live tweeted.
Yeah. It really kind of taught me in a lot of ways how to be on the internet. Like I had Tumblr by the last season of Lost, and like one of my first posts is like getting ready for the Lost finale. I could pull it up right now.
You should post it on Instagram.
I should. I'm sure that I can find it.
Yeah, because I mean, I know that I spent time on those message boards when I wasn't on my dancing message board when I was at my stupid corporate job.
Yeah, and like I talked about it, I'm sure, when we talked about the episode when we watched the pilot, but all of the like viral kind of marketing and the weird commercials and the like internet deep dives, like, and the weird ARGs and the Lost experience that I was so deeply invested in. And I genuinely think like I will get texts from friends that are like, I need you to find this weird esoteric like difficult to find thing on the internet, and I'm everybody's go-to for that. And Lost did teach me that.
Right.
And so I think that stuff is really compelling and really interesting and really unique in a way that this TV show got me through something difficult isn't necessarily.
Right. And I also think that like there could be a whole, I mean, maybe this is just the way my brain works and no one else would care, but I would watch a documentary about the early days of bulletin board culture.
Totally.
Like, because literally every friend I have from New York City, for the most part, I met on a dancing bulletin board. And like, I met them all in person immediately. Like, we weren't just internet friends. We were all in-person friends that danced with each other 4 nights a week and would stay out till 5 a.m. And like, it was a very in-person friendship, but we also all had office jobs and would spend all day long at our office jobs talking to each other on this bulletin board. And that was like such an enormous part of my 20s and how I made the friends that I made. And like, you know, the fact that in this documentary that happened as well. These people went from internet friends to like people who would run into each other at Comic-Cons or would start like charities together. Like, I think they could have delved a lot more into that part of it.
Yeah, I get the impression, and I might be the same way, that if I were me getting a chance to make this documentary, even if I knew that doing something a little more like thoughtful that way was the way to go, or I could hang out with Hurley and Sawyer and Penny and all, and Desmond for a few hours, I might make the less interesting choice.
I get that. I do. I just feel like this felt to me like a lot of other documentaries about a lot of other pop culture, you know, phenomena.
Yeah. Let's say, what are some positive things? Because I didn't dislike it.
I didn't either. I'm immediately going to say something negative. I didn't either. I just thought it was too long.
Too long.
No, I mean,
that's coming from me.
Yeah.
If I'm saying it's too long.
Yeah. There were certainly positives. I mean, like, it's nice to sort of revisit where these people are now in their careers and how it, for a lot of them, kicked off their careers. It's nice to, not that this is anything new, but to hear Daniel Dae Kim talk about what it meant to have a Korean couple speaking Korean, you know, with subtitles where you're meant to empathize with them and not see them as the other. Like, you know, the diversity of the cast, all of those things are nice to revisit.
Yeah, we had to go back.
Yeah, we had to go back. And, you know, there are people, as someone who was not, I wouldn't have considered myself a casual fan at the time. I would have considered myself like a real fan, but who has been distanced from the show for a long time. It was nice to hear from some people that maybe I didn't at the time because I didn't stay in that fan community. Like, there are people that were behind the scenes. Like, I didn't really listen to fucking even like Damon Lindelof or J.J. Abrams talk that much about the show after it was over.
Right.
You know? So it was interesting to go back. And plus, we just did The Leftovers just probably like 6 months ago. But we talked about the premiere of The Leftovers, and then I went and watched the entire series, which is, you know, what he did after this. I liked seeing Michael Emerson in possibly the apartment that is in the building my friend was in.
Hold on 1 second.
Andrea has to push the numbers. Did you push the numbers?
Yeah, I had to get up to push the numbers 48, 15, 16, 23, 42.
Yeah,
montage at the end for folks who didn't watch it with us. They asked like pretty much everybody involved if they remembered the numbers.
Yeah.
And the number of people who didn't, who should have, was really distressing.
It was most of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, whenever I hear that set of numbers, it's similar enough to the apertures on a camera that I just, in my head, I immediately go to the apertures instead. Yeah.
Huh.
Because, well, the apertures are like 2.8, 4, 8, 11, 16, 32.
Oh.
64. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I immediately just flip it to the list of apertures.
I really loved the opening credits. They were like kind of like like almost stop motiony. They reminded me a little bit of the opening credits to Beetlejuice, the original one. I thought a lot of it looked really nice.
Yeah.
And they did some fun stuff with like when they would show an old clip of something or an old TV interview, it would be on a Dharma Initiative like issued old like compact looking computer terminal.
Yeah.
I thought that was fun.
Yeah. It was less than it could have been, but it was enough to spend time with and enjoy, which is not really probably the highest compliment. I will say Elizabeth Mitchell still looks fucking amazing. Some of them look like they've aged. She looks exactly the same as she did 15 years ago. And I'm not sure how. She is 5 years older than me. She is in her mid-50s, and I am confused. She's fucking stunning.
Yeah, I really love when they talk about the diversity of cast. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's 95% just drop-dead beautiful people of different races and ethnicities. And like one big guy and one old guy. And then everybody else is stunning.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I didn't mind it.
You know who else wasn't in it?
Saeed. Speaking of stunning,
of stunning, that's where my brain that's why I got there.
Literally, I almost said this.
That's the path that I took to get to that.
That's so funny. I was literally thinking of the exact same thing.
Yeah, that's how I got there. That's really funny. Yeah, he wasn't there.
Listeners, if you script back a little bit, you can hear about 2 seconds of silence where we were both thinking about Saeed.
Yeah, you can hear the wheels turning. Yeah, they mentioned Naveen Andrews, but he doesn't show up in this, and he's not really commented on that he's not there either, which is weird.
He and Charlie both, and Charlie gets a lot of talk time.
Yeah.
But Saeed, I think Josh Holloway might be the only one who even mentions him.
Yeah, there's a comment about, I think it is from Josh Holloway, talking about the relationship between, a white woman and an Iraqi man in the show, and how that was, like, for the time, kind of a radical thing to do and not really comment on. But yeah, he wasn't in it, which was disappointing because he's very nice to look at.
And I think he seems pretty lovely, which most of this cast does. I don't love how not glowing we're being about this documentary, because you can tell they put a lot of work and thought and love into it. But I was kind of like pettily texting you about some of the people involved in this documentary who just kind of like don't pass the vibe check for me. But
yeah.
I
mean, I think it's fair. We don't always have to love everything we watch. Like, we can appreciate the fact that it exists and have watched things that do something similar but better recently, and therefore have a hard time,
Yeah, and I did like a lot of it. I did. I did.
What else did you like?
Did I mention the opening credits? There's a polar bear in a Dharma jumpsuit. Really fun.
There is a polar bear in a Dharma jumpsuit. It's true.
Who's like clacking away at the terminal every so often. Really fun. You know what I loved? And I don't know who this is for. Well, it's for me and people like me. It was therapy for me. But nobody who needed to hear it is watching this documentary. It's them setting people straight about that finale.
Oh, yeah. I feel like I've heard you talk about it enough that I'm like, well, yeah, this is Andrea's take on the finale.
It makes me crazy that you like or don't like the finale, fine. But if the reason you don't like it is because you think they were in purgatory the whole time, you just watched the show wrong.
Yeah, there is a scene, an extended cut of scenes where every single person practically in the documentary just says it wasn't purgatory. It was never purgatory.
And it like clearly wasn't. It's not even like we're doing that thing where we're like, oh, well, you just ignore the finale because the finale makes it purgatory. Right. It doesn't.
Right.
And here's something that I like that I don't know if I've ever heard. It's possible I have heard them say this before and it's just been so long. But they were talking about, they would often say, especially in season 1, that everything you see on the island has a scientific or like based in reality explanation. And then that, to be fair, that goes by the wayside.
Yeah.
And one of them says something like, well, there are like 2 ways to handle a show like this. It can be like the Michael Crichton set of rules where it is based in like science and fact, or the Indiana Jones one where it's like, no, these ghosts are going to come out of the thing and melt your fucking faces off. Right. And one of them says like, but really we were an Indiana Jones show presenting as a Michael Crichton show.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's kind of, there it is in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Like if you can go in knowing that, I feel like you will have, and being open to that, a much better time with Lost.
I think that's really true. I think, we are going to be returning to Yellow Jackets relatively soon, thank God.
Oh!
And it is that sort of question, you know, of like, which is it? Is it Michael Crichton, but it looks like what was it? Indiana Jones? No.
Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones,
that's
yeah.
right.
Or is it Indiana Jones, but it looks like Michael Crichton? Or is it, you know, we don't know still.
I do think that the reason I'm so open to anything with Yellow Jackets, and it's hard to annoy me, like people get really fed up with it much quicker than I do, is because of Lost. I really think Lost kind of taught me how to sit with ambiguity in a way that I maybe wouldn't have been able to without it. Genuinely. Like, I think that's real.
That's fair. We have discussed the fact that I am not I don't think I have a problem with ambiguity as much as I prefer things to have a scientific explanation. That feels more like something that I want to watch. And so it's more of like a preference for one over the other versus a dislike of ambiguity.
That makes sense. And I think,
like it doesn't bother me that Yellow Jackets is still in this ambiguous place. I just would prefer the answers to be scientific for my own just way of looking at, you know, the world.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We're all allowed. I don't know that. I think I'm always going to lean a little bit toward. For someone who's so happy to sit in ambiguity, I really do love to set up a dichotomy, because I was just going to say, in the same way, like you're always going to lean Molly Ringwald, I'm always going to be John Candy. I think maybe you're always going to be Michael Crichton, and I'm always going to be a little more Indiana Jones. Like, I think that, and I think both are okay. Something else he said at the end is like, the show spent its run asking the big questions. Who are we? Why are we here? What's our purpose? And then we watch, like, viewers thought Lost was going to be able to answer questions. And I think it's Evangeline Lilly who says, like, that every major religion has been trying to answer for millennia. And that's a good point. There's what answer could they have given us?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, they set up the questions. So,
but so does religion. Like,
I know, but
I don't
they're
think
two different.
Well, I think there.
Goals.
Well, I think there are two different kinds of questions happening on a show like Lost.
Yeah,
there's what are we doing? Why are we here? What's our purpose? And then there's like, what's at the bottom of the island?
Sure.
How do we create time travel?
Yeah.
What's in the coffin? And I think those questions, for the most part, were answered. Those big questions that it can be like an examination of, or kind of like playing in. I don't need a show like that to answer. But, or thinking about Yellow Jackets, I don't think Yellow Jackets is asking those huge questions, really.
No, I feel like it's a much more narrow version of it. It's about the effects of trauma on individuals and the idea of the unreliable narrator. It's about what's real and what's not.
Yeah. And so in that case,
not in the larger sense of like religion, but in the personal sense.
And so like in that case, I might be less satisfied with less concrete answers. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's definitely, it's like a smaller scale question in Yellow Jackets. It's about these people on I almost said on the island, in the woods, and what happened and what didn't and how it affected them versus bigger questions being told through a group of people who happen to come together in this place.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think I've done a lot of comparing. Plenty of people have, but a lot of comparing Lost to Yellow Jackets. And I think because of that, though, I'm maybe putting some unfair expectations on what I want from Yellow Jackets, even though I think that's a huge difference that sets up something that kind of shifts how I'm thinking about it right now as we're talking about it.
Right. The other thing they covered in this was sort of the early days of podcasting, which was fun because I started listening to podcasts like in the early 2000s. Like I was people didn't know what the fuck podcasts were.
Yeah,
and I
same.
like the dance crowd that I was a part of, like there was a podcast that they did in like 2004. I do remember, it's so funny. I was like, I didn't listen to any of these podcasts. And then I heard the kid's voice.
Oh,
and I was like, wait, maybe I did listen to this because that sounds super familiar.
You know, what's funny is I got into podcasts because I knew there were Lost podcasts, but I was so spoiler averse back then. I wanted to know everything, but on my own.
Yeah.
So if there was anything that like could have veered into spoiler territory where somebody figured something out faster than me, or like Ryan like just being there on set taking pictures, like I was so afraid of that kind of spoiler that I just didn't listen to them. But that is what got me into podcasts early on. I just found other ones. And now, Jody,
look at us now. Here we are. But yeah, there were a lot of like talking heads that I was like, I don't know what this person is contributing. That's what I mean when I say like I think there were things that could have been trimmed down, and there were areas that I would have been interested to hear more. Like there's, you know, I actually really enjoyed hearing from, you know, even if I don't remember listening to the podcast, Ryan Ozawa and his daughter talking about the time that they spent with, you know, running around the island with a camera and recording the podcast at home and like being one of the early podcasts. I would have loved to have actually spent more time with them.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it's you and I who are people who are interested in specific, like a specific interest. And also in fandom and also in how people interact with pop culture. Like, obviously, that's the stuff we're going to gravitate toward. I wonder if there are other people who watched this and would have just wanted more of, I don't know. Josh Holloway. Like,
maybe. I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure there are. But, like, I do think that there was more of an interesting story there than we got. Like, I mean, unfortunately, you know, his wife, who he had podcasted with, passed away from cancer a few years ago. And a lot of what came out of the fandom community around it was a charity that raises money. It's called Cancer Gets Lost. And like, I know that, of course, they will focus more on the celebrity side of things, but I don't know. I liked that guy and his daughter talking about, you know, them putting up warning posters around the island with his face on it because he was running around with a big camera lens, like getting pictures of things he wasn't supposed to.
Yeah, I thought all that was so fun and just has so much more to say about how, especially now, because like there's so many prestige kinds of shows that have these fan bases, and even shows that aren't like that. Like every show anymore that gets more than a season ends up with like a huge fan, like not huge. What am I trying to say?
Not huge, but like niche and enthusiastic.
Yeah, fan base. And again, so much of that is because Lost taught us how to be that kind of viewer. Also, the backlash of the finale and of things like they talk a little bit, again, this is not new, but talking about Nikki and Paolo, two background characters who were brought more to the forefront, were around for about 30 seconds and then killed off. And we sort of talk about that as it being a direct result to the fans' reaction to them. But as they kind of say in this documentary, it's not really the case.
Yeah.
Because they were already being written out before the first episode with them even aired. But that sort of involvement from the fans of like feeling like they have a say in shaping what a show should be. There's a direct line from that to the people, and not that I'm gonna I keep bringing it back to Yellow Jackets because it's coming soon. But there's a direct line from that to the people involved in Yellow Jackets lurking on Reddit. Right. Totally.
You know, like reading the comment section and hearing what people think about it.
And I think all of that is interesting and worth talking about. And I didn't necessarily need Josh Holloway and Evangeline Lilly there to explore that as much, you know?
No.
I wonder, I guess you and I aren't really the right people. I was going to say, would this have like ended up on our radar if they weren't involved? But yeah, of course. But
yeah, I also in my head couldn't help but compare the way that the talking heads were set up versus watching Chasing Amy, because it was like in everybody's apartments and houses, it seemed like.
I was thinking about that too. It was like,
or they were lit fine, but
And everybody, I was wondering what was actually going on there, because it did feel like it was in everybody's house. But for the, like, why did almost everybody have a really cool sofa in a very symmetrical room? Like, everybody had like a sofa I've never seen before.
Because
like,
production
I was like, did they,
comes in and cleans it up and makes
that's
it look
what I
nice.
was. That's what I was wondering. Is like, did they like rent out a bunch of like little pods?
Yeah,
And, like,
well, because as I mentioned over text when we were watching it, Michael Emerson lived in the same building as my friend Christine for many years, and I ran into him and his wife in the elevator once or twice. He was very nice. Christine, who lived in the building with him for many years, said he was very sweet. But it looked like he was in a penthouse apartment when they were filming because of the view out the windows, and that they did live and probably still do in that penthouse apartment. So that was probably his apartment, I'm guessing. Also, because there was a big radiator behind him. And like I said, the radiators in that building are the loudest New York City radiators I've ever heard. And that's saying something. Like, I don't know how she ever slept.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was his actual apartment. Just maybe with some like knickknacks put away.
Some zhuzhing up or yeah. But like Evangeline Lilly looks like she's in like a she looks like she's in like a podcast studio. That's what it looked like to me.
She's on some sort of like soundstage or something. Yeah. But like, and I think when they're interviewing J.J. Abrams, it also looks like he's on a set. But a lot of the other people looked like they could have been in their homes. The set, I'm going to call him Hurley. Jorge was, it looked like he was
like
in his home or in a home.
Yeah, I think so too.
And, you know, Daniel Day Kim like moved to Hawaii after or during the show and just didn't leave. And so they are filming him and Desmond, whose real name I always forget, in Hawaii.
His name's Desmond.
Yeah, his name's Desmond. They were filming the two of them in Hawaii.
Yeah. Yeah, and it like I think that's fine, and everything looked nice, and it was like, but it is interesting to think of that, as you said, compared to Savra. We talked quite a while about how you wanted there to be like a kind of like cohesiveness that wasn't boring but connected everybody, and that's why I said like, and it is, but like why this really does feel more like an oral history than Chasing Amy or, you know, anything else,
because there was a second story laid on top of Chasing Amy the movie by the documentary about it. Like, we talked about how that it started as one thing and then turned into a story about Sav himself and his relationship to the movie, but also his relationship to himself and his partner and all of that. And like this, I think that's what I mean when I say like this started to go there with the fandom and the people around it and the podcasters and all of that. And it just didn't, it tried to do both.
Right.
And I think that, you know, I would have personally been more interested to just spend some more time with like, you know, the crew, the people around it.
And it felt to me too, like when they get into so if you're listening to this and weren't a super Lost fan, you might not have heard that in recent years it came out that writer's room was horrific to work in. Unless you were one of a favored white men of J.J. Abrams in particular, it seems like, or I mean of Damon Lindelof. And everybody has been pretty open about it, and like Damon and JJ and Carlton and all have like spoken up and apologized and been, I would say, like pretty, it's not up to me to say whether or not their apology should be accepted but they seem to be pretty open to like, what's the word that I want, Jody? Like
accountability. I mean, like, because Damon especially in this is very much like, it's funny because when they get to, what's the third guy's name?
Carlton?
Yeah, when they get to Carlton, that's what I expect the apology to sound like. Like, it's taking accountability, but it's like,
he's being a little bit like, oh, I wish I'd known. And it's like, you fucking did know.
Right. And Damon's apology or moment of accountability is it's one of the more straightforward, like, this was my fault. Like, I was in charge. I was the vibe setter. Like, this is on me.
And he even says, like, and, you know, the favoritism I played on, like, for other people, you're right. That is racism, like, or sexism, or, like, he doesn't even try to say, like, I didn't realize that's what was happening.
No, it's one of the more, like, very matter of fact like non-hedging acknowledgments of that kind of thing that I've seen.
Yeah, I agree. But I just keep thinking about it as compared to Chasing Amy and the Joey Lauren Adams moment in that documentary. And I think this felt a little bit like, well, if we're going to do a Lost documentary, we have to address it. So here we will. And I think they did a good job, but it felt a little perfunctory. And I also like Javier talks about being in that writer's room and how difficult it was for him. He's the only one who really gets to speak about it as one of the affected parties as opposed to the oppressor in the room.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I kind of was a little like, I don't know why. I mean, I know why we gave the showrunner and why we gave Carlton and Damon and JJ so much time to talk about it. But I'm more interested in hearing from the people who were actually affected. And that's what I think is so powerful about that moment in Chasing Amy. Because Kevin does a little bit get to like take a little bit of accountability, but it's almost like, who cares what Kevin thinks about that time?
Yeah.
Like,
we get to hear Joey Lauren Adams actually describe all of the shit that she went through.
Right. And we really don't get much of that here. So I'm like, I don't know. That felt like a little bit of a miss for me. And maybe if I were one of those people in the writer's room, I wouldn't have been like champing at the bit to So who knows if they reached out to people or not. You're
listening to The Watchers, a show where two women from opposite ends of New Jersey compare everything to Chasing Amy.
It just does such a good job. Oh, shout out to Punchline. They're a Pennsylvania pop punk band that I've been a fan of since they're like Fueled by Ramen days. They're the song that plays at the end, Roller Coaster Smoke.
I wondered.
Yeah. Which is from like 2010. It's not something they did for the documentary. Shout out to Punchline. Really fun that got used in the documentary.
Yeah. No, I think, the thing I will take away from this is just a revisiting of that specific time in internet culture and how it changed the way, because it's on a continuum, right? From like the early days of like AIM messaging and like even before that, through the bulletin board era, through then social media and like MySpace and Friendster, and then moving on to like Facebook and etc. So it's just a very interesting specific time for me because it was my 20s, right? And so it's how I made, like, literally I had shoulder surgery last week, and the girl that came and like talked to me while I was in the shower so she'd be aware if I fell down is someone that I met on a bulletin board in like 1999 or 2000. Like, so, it was a very specific time in pop culture or internet culture that to me now seems like just such a sweeter, more gentle time. There were no algorithms. The most recent post was at the top. There's usually a pinned post that gave some rules for behavior. There was a moderator who would like take down anything really negative or crazy.
And
those were the good days. So before we move on to talking about next week, I think we have a couple of little things, one of which is a whole bunch of Yellow Jackets things have come out recently in the past week or so that we are going to talk about, but not today, because I also think there's going to be more in the next like week or two that are going to be slowly dripping out to gain to get some momentum going. Yeah. But there was a new sort of longer trailer. There were some on-set photos. Reddit has blown up again. The Yellow Jackets forum is hopping.
It's exciting.
Yeah. So we are going to talk about all that stuff, but not tonight because it is almost 9 and I had surgery last week and I'm very tired. But we'll devote some time in the next week or two to covering all of the stuff that's coming up and that's come out. I also do think that we are going to probably have an episode before the new season where we go and run through like a lot of the theories, a lot of the stuff that's come out and what might happen, what we think could happen, what people are saying might happen, just kind of have a little theory roundup before the new season starts.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I think it'll be worthwhile.
Yeah.
And then one little thing I want to shout out is that if you loved our conversation with Sav Rogers about Chasing Amy, or if you skipped it because you didn't get to watch the documentary,
now's your chance.
Now's your chance, because on December 15th, next week, they're doing a virtual screening through Eventive, featuring a special introduction from Kevin Smith. And then at the end, there will be a Q&A with Sav Rogers and Riley, his wonderful wife. And it's going to be moderated by Princess Weeks, who is in the documentary.
Fantastic.
And is one of the best parts of it.
When we interviewed Sav, one of the things we commented on was the really good conversational vibe between him and some of the people he was speaking to about the movie that were in the queer community or were like pop culture writers, commentators. And Princess Weeks was like, to
especially
me, the number one
and
example.
Specifically, yeah.
Of like a really great dynamic between the two of them.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I'm definitely planning to attend. So
I probably will too.
Let's be a couple of us in the Q&A who might ask some good questions. We'll
there
just keep asking Sav questions about backdrops so he can talk about craft the whole time.
I'll bring up lighting.
Yeah, and he'll be thrilled.
Yeah.
So that's December 15th. I'll drop a link to that in the show notes.
Perfect.
I'll also drop a link to the Cancer Gets Lost charity because I think that is worthwhile. And I guess all that's left is to talk about what we're doing next. This one was a surprise to both of us.
I'm so excited about it,
I can't wait. So we're watching a documentary, and it's one that you and I have been complaining about this a little bit. I don't understand.
How did we not know?
My search terms should have led me directly to this documentary.
Yep. Mine as well.
But of course it took Jason Mantzoukas. So if you listen to How Did This Get Made, every other episode ish is a Last Looks episode where they like reflect on the episode of the movie they watched the week before, and then like usually Jason Mantzoukas recommends stuff. And what he recommended this week is a documentary called Flipside, which like I genuinely only got through him talking about like halfway through his description of it before I paused to go read about it. And he said, like, it's about this documentarian who goes back to the record store he worked at as a teenager in New Jersey. And I said, hold on a second. And
it came out this year. This is not some obscure 1974 movie.
Yeah, I think it came out in 2023, actually. But it's, like, very recent.
Very recent. And both of us have, in the past month or two, used the search term New Jersey documentaries.
Yeah.
Neither of us found this.
I've also Googled things like documentaries to watch after Kim's Video, which you'd think like Video Store, documentaries like The Last Blockbuster. Like, I've done everything to get us to something that would fall in line with stuff we've talked about.
Nope. It took lovable masshole Jason Mantzoukas to teach two Jersey girls about a movie called Flipside. It
just seems wild. And so I sent that information to you.
Yeah.
I looked up the Rotten Tomatoes entry for it. I saw that it has a 97% on the tomato meter. I sent that to you, and then you watched the trailer.
Yeah.
And then
of course I watched the trailer.
You were like, fuck it.
It starts with Uncle Floyd.
Uncle Floyd.
Here we go. Ready?
Flipside Records, Flipside, last shit.
So I got about 30 seconds into it, and then I immediately went and found it. It's also, you'll be able to watch it. It's free on Amazon Prime. Or it's free if you have Amazon Prime, I guess I should say. And I thought I was just going to watch a little bit of it through lunch, and I watched the entire thing. I've already seen it. I'll watch it again. I loved it. I should save that for the review, but I'm so excited for you to see it, Jody, and for our listeners to watch it. It's so in line with everything we've been talking about.
I'm so excited. I'm going to watch it in the next night or two. I texted my friend Andy to see if he knew of the record store, because it's in Pompton Lakes, which is not that far from where I grew up at all, and even closer to where he has lived. And he said he's definitely been in there. It's not like a place he was a regular of, but he remembers the storefront's very notable looking. But the documentarian grew up in Franklin Lakes, which is like in Bergen County.
It just seems I'm like
How is
offended that nobody we know told us about
Is this a Bernstein Bears thing?
Like it just we actually what happened is we willed it into existence by looking so much for something exactly like this, and then it was delivered to us through a like less obvious vessel so that we wouldn't be suspicious.
Well, and it's also I certainly can't spoil anyone because I haven't even watched it. I watched the trailer, but from what I got from the trailer, he's exploring his own archive, which is literally what I am doing right now.
The number of times
he's like a couple years older than me, but yeah, I'm so excited. I can't. You messaged this to me, and it was definitely one of those moments where I was like, "Wait, there's no fucking way this is a real thing that neither of us have ever heard of ever."
And it's not like I don't really understand either because it's like Judd Apatow produced it. Like It's not like it was this tiny little indie. Like
no, it's not that distant. Like literally, doesn't he do a whole thing on Ira Glass in it? Like,
yeah.
What? How is this so far distant from? It's literally we should have known about this the moment it happened.
Truly,
I'm so
it makes no sense.
Confused,
but it's perfect.
Yes,
where it's lining up and what we're talking about. And we have another documentary after this that's also really lovely and is going to be in conversation with everything we've been talking about. So I'm really excited for the end of this year because we've got some really fun stuff coming up.
Yeah, I am too. And, you know, I was going to watch it tonight actually, but the series finale of Somebody Somewhere is tonight, or it's already out. It's been out for a day or two. And
you need to watch that.
I guess I'd rather cry than learn something.
Oh, well, guess what, Jody?
Oh, no, am I going to cry too?
I cried. I don't know if you're going to cry,
well,
but I cried.
I mean...
I teared up many times. I don't want to say too much, but I did have a moment where I had to pause and Kitsy came out of their room and they were like, "Are you good?" So.
Well, I've got to watch the finale of Somebody Somewhere while I have the stomach for it, because I watched a bunch of interviews today with Jeff Hiller and Bridget Everett, and now it's like I know primed. That the show is ending, and I need to just.
Did you know it was the series finale?
I wasn't sure.
Okay.
I thought it might be, but I wasn't 100% sure. I thought there might have been another season, but this is it. This is the last one. I mean, what a perfect, not to get off on a tangent, but what a perfect fucking 3-season, 7 episodes per season, half-hour episodes packed with so much like sweetness and love and friendship and ridiculousness and silliness and queer characters and chosen family. And I'm just obsessed with it. And I'm making you watch it. And we will talk about it at some point.
It's a lot easier for me now that I know it's over.
Yeah, that's what I figured. It's not that many episodes. They're not that long.
What is that, like 10 hours? That's like
you're asking for math.
I think that's like one day of doing nothing else. So
yeah, and it's so worth it. It's so beautiful. Like I think I mentioned this maybe before, but my niece was helping, take care of me after my shoulder surgery, and I introduced her to it. And we watched more than the first season in a couple of days, but we will get to that. And we've got some documentaries. We've got some Yellow Jacket stuff to chat about. We've got a few more things. And then in February, we've got Yellow Jackets. So soon.
I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. We're definitely going to do some sort of theory roundup episode because I'm dipping my toe back into the waters of Reddit. I'm off of the Rotator Cuff subreddit. I'm only on the Yellow Jackets and the Public Service Loan Forgiveness subreddits. Those are my two go-tos.
Yeah.
I can't work on any furniture since my surgeries, so I'm off of the furniture restoration subreddit. So yeah, I'm ready to focus in. I've been taking some notes.
Am I going to rewatch? I might rewatch season 2 at least.
I've already watched it, I think, at least twice.
I watched
I'm
it
not
twice
sure.
through, like while we were watching.
Yeah.
I guess maybe, we'll see.
If nothing else, I'm going to go through my notes again. But yeah, Reddit's got some interesting shit going on right now. So we'll get to that for sure as well.
Yeah.
But
I'm excited to especially after the Lost documentary, I know that this episode has gone long, I think. But Yellow Jackets is one of the few shows to kind of crack my brain open the way that Lost did, where I'm like, oh, I can't wait to just like get back to kind of like drinking that Kool-Aid and
getting some new stuff to kind of
throw a few more pins in the corkboard.
Throw a few more pins in the corkboard. Exactly.
That'll be fun.
Put our citizen detective hats back on.
That's right.
So
almost time.
Almost.
But
we're getting there.
But for next week, Flipside, links in the show notes for where you can watch it. Please do watch this. You guys, like, folks, you're gonna love it.
I'm so excited. Yeah. I'm so excited. It's like everything I could ever want.
Totally. All right. We'll see you. I mean,
we'll see you in fucking Jersey. We'll see you in Pompton Lakes.
What county is Pompton Lakes?
I think it's technically Passaic. I should know this.
It is Passaic. You're right.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. Because Franklin Lakes is very close to there as well, but that's Bergen County. So it's kind of on that line. I wonder if they say Goosey Night. Probably not.
Well, we'll just have to ask Chris Wilcha. I'll message him on Instagram and just ask him if they say Goosey Night.
Just no preamble.
He's from Bergen County, so actually we'd have to message the Flipside Records owner to ask if he says Goosey Night.
Right. But Franklin Lakes is a very Bergen County part of Bergen County, but it is close to Passaic County. You never know. I got to find that map again. Anyway, we'll see you at the record store.
We'll see you at Flipside.